Jason and Shelley Martinkus here for another kitchen conversation. It's been a while since we posted, but we wanted to get back at it and address some more of the key questions that were asked over and over again. And this one is about trust building. So very consistently we're asked the question, how does trust get rebuilt? Or we hear, how can I ever trust him again? Or how can I ever trust her again? And it seems like it's a rhetorical question because it's such an enormous thing, like this idea that trust is gone and that it'll ever come back. But it is possible. And the process of rebuilding trust is one that takes diligence, time, effort, specific and intentional actions to do. So we just want to address that a little bit. So Shelley, I'll let you start. When you think about our earliest days in the recovery process, what did it take to start trusting me again?
Well, before I answer that, I think that, as you're talking, it was really uncomfortable to not trust you. I think naturally I want to trust people, and so that was super uncomfortable for me to realize I couldn't trust you.
Yeah. Because you're trusting by nature.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think about maybe 6 months in-ish to our process, so for the first 6 months, I would just say that I just was like, yep, I don't trust him. Even when you would do something that at face value seemed legitimate, I was like, nope, not trusting him,
Yeah.
But I would say maybe 6 months into our process, I came to a place of just realizing that really I could only trust God, and I couldn't trust you at that point. And further, in addition to that, that I would be okay no matter what, as long as I had God.
Mm-hmm.
I realized, in the end, I may not have you, I may not have, our house or whatever else, friends, but as long as I had God, that I would be okay.
Yeah.
And so really just, that was a huge part of my journey initially, was putting my trust and faith in God and not in you. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. And I think the same was true for me, in those early days. It was like, I kept worrying, moment to moment, day to day, like from between breakfast and lunch, like, is my marriage going to make it? Mm-hmm. Will you still be around, when I get home from work today? So it was touch and go, and it was every day was a question mark. And there came that point where I sort of had to surrender that and say, okay, I've got to do the right thing. I've got to do the next right thing that God is calling me to. And if that builds trust, awesome. That's a bonus. Yeah. And if you're still there at the end of the day, that's awesome. That's a bonus. But I have to live the way God is calling me to live, mm-hmm. and trust Him for the outcome of trust being restored, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
Which is really hard because there's no measurable progress in the beginning. It feels like it's just this nebulous, maybe someday, somehow she'll trust me again. And instead what you start to see is over time, with consistency, trust starts to come back.
I bet that was hard when you're not getting any positive feedback from me. You know what I mean?
Totally. And I hear that all the time from guys in my office. Like, look, I'm doing the right thing. I'm saying the right thing. I'm present with my emotions, but she doesn't buy it, mm-hmm. at all. And it's like, yep, par for the course. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So let's talk about a couple of practical things.
Okay.
Right? So just kind of thinking, okay, what built trust at our house during this journey? And there were some little things and some big things, and the little things added up over time. And so a couple of those for me, one was being accountable for my time and for my money, right? For our money. Mm-hmm. Like being able to say, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing, and actually being where I said I was going to be and doing what I said I was going to do with who I said I was going to do it with, over and over and over again. That seemed to build trust. And then being accountable for our money, like actually being able to pin down to the penny, here's where the money went that I spent, was trust building as well. And even today, if you look at my wallet today, I have like $2 in there because here we are almost a decade later, and I learned to put everything on a credit card so that there would be a record of it.
As well as, didn't you keep a journal? I mean, you did.
Right. I kept a 30-minute journal that said, here's where I am, here's what I'm doing every half hour, which, I tell guys to do that in my office, and the wives will say, well, how can I trust anything on there? And the reality is she can't. But the consistency of seeing him go over and above to keep this tedious journal, yeah. can start to build trust.
Right.
Right. So, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, two things that come to mind. One is just before disclosure, I just remember needing to get something out of your wallet and you panicking. And that happened more than once.
Oh, yeah.
And then at some point into our recovery, as you were rebuilding trust, I remember just needing something out of your wallet, and you're like, go ahead, anytime, you look, whenever you want. And I was just like, opening up your wallet, and but that was a huge thing for me, that you know what I mean? It
was.
Surrendered that.
Yeah, surrendered that freedom and that right to privacy. Like, so many guys struggle with that. Like, well, this is my stuff, and it's my gym bag, and my safe, and we got to surrender all that. Our right to that privacy is gone.
Right. I think another big thing for me was the 5-minute rule, just that I could call you and I knew that you would either answer or call back within 5 minutes, or I would expect that the worst had happened.
Right.
And so that was, I just think that was really big for me, just to know that because I know that took a lot of work and was a sacrifice for you once again.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you, just went above and beyond, I thought, oh, he really means this, felt
Yeah. I tell guys in my office all the time, and in every man's battle, like, trust is destroyed at our wives' expense. Trust is rebuilt at our expense. Like, it is going to cost us to rebuild trust in our marriage. And that exercise 5-minute rule, I think what was so important about that for me personally was it forced me to decide what my priorities are. Will I serve me and have my freedom, and am I entitled to my time? Or will I serve you and put everything else second to your phone call? Which I did. There was one important meeting with my boss and a vice president and another guy. And I answered that call right square in the middle of that meeting. And they looked at me funny. But at the end of the day, it's like, my wife's phone call is way more important than you guys.
Right.
So.
Thank you. Yeah. So there's one more thing I wanted to say.
Okay, go.
Okay. I think a lot of times whenever I'm asked, especially by women, do you trust Jason today? Do you trust him? And my response, and so what I want to communicate to anyone listening, is that I do trust Jason today, and I'm so thankful for that,
Me
that
too.
I can sit here today and say that. Number two, that trust, it does look different though. My trust with Jason is not a naive trust. It's a real trust, and it's something that you have earned. And so it's really special, and it's different. Yeah. I think that's...
And that's not to say that there aren't times today when that comes into question. Like, there are still conversations we have to have about, am I living my life in a trustworthy way? And that's okay. Every time we get to have that conversation, we get to kind of reconfirm where we are with that. Yeah.
All right. What about you? Anything else?
And thanks for joining us for another kitchen conversation.